Thanks for being here this morning. We're at the SES headquarters to speak about tropical Cyclone Alfred. Obviously this is a major concern for northern New South Wales communities and our friends in Queensland. I want to make it clear that the SES, the Bureau of Meteorology, emergency services in New South Wales have been working hard to pre-position and ensure we're in a position where we can get emergency service workers on the ground ready to go. But still a huge ask for the New South Wales community, particularly those that live on the northern rivers, to be prepared for the worst. We hope for the best, but we have to prepare for the worst. I'm joined this morning with Jane Golding from the BOM, as well as Commissioner Wassing from the SES, Mal Lanyon from the Reconstruction Authority, Jihad Dib, the Minister for Emergency Services. We'll speak briefly and then we'll take all coming questions. A few things that are obviously of concern to us is that the weather event has turned west. We expect it to make landfall around 2 a.m. on Friday morning. Now the concern from the SES and emergency services is that high tide is expected to be at 1 a.m, just an hour before landfall is due to make, before the weather event's due to make landfall. If high tide occurs at the same moment, then people that live on the coast or on beaches or close to rivers or riverine areas can expect the high tide to be up to 0.5 metre higher than the high tide they would ordinarily expect. This is accompanied with high winds, which we're already seeing coming into the northern rivers and the northern part of New South Wales. I understand Qantas has cancelled flights to both Coffs Harbour and Ballina in the last couple of hours, and the weather event is obviously picking up pace. But the key times are 2 a.m. Friday morning. So the SES will speak to people who are in a vulnerable situation or who are concerned about their living arrangements to relocate on Thursday. Speak to family and friends, speak about an opportunity to move out of their house on Thursday, because by the time of Thursday evening into Friday morning it may well be too late. You've made that decision to stay in your house. We're asking for people to think about relocating on Thursday if they believe they're in a vulnerable situation. The New South Wales Government's also setting up seven evacuation centres that will be available from 4 p.m. this afternoon. They're sprinkled throughout the Northern Rivers area, and details and locations of those sites are on the SES website and obviously will be communicated through broadcast media in the coming days. We've also made the decision to close 122 schools in the Northern Rivers for both today and tomorrow, and that's from the Clarence Valley up to the Queensland border and west out to Kyogle. So if you're in that school catchment area, school's not going ahead today and tomorrow. That decision's obviously been made to ensure that if there are parents or individuals that are involved with emergency service preparation, that they're able to focus on that situation. We don't want to have people in a obviously a dangerous situation or a vulnerable situation in the coming 48 hours. We've got a massive SES contingent that are pre-positioned into the Northern Rivers region. Emergency services have obviously worked hard with fire and rescue as well as the RFS to ensure all hands are on deck. However, if this is a major natural weather event, a natural disaster on a huge proportion, then we are asking the community to do their bit to be pre-positioned, be pre-prepared, make sure that you're prepared in the event of the worst case scenario. Download the Hazards Near Me app. Ensure that you're fully aware of where you will go in the event of a natural disaster. Listen to emergency broadcasts, and under no circumstances, in no event, drive through floodwaters or walk through floodwaters. It is the major way people lose their lives in these natural emergencies, because they take the risk of driving through floodwaters. They put themselves in danger, the passenger in the car danger, usually a loved one or a family member, and also emergency service workers, and it might be a volunteer from the SES who is then sent in to try and save your life. And we don't want to put people in danger. Please use common sense. Don't drive through floodwaters. Before I hand over to the BOM, I spoke briefly with the Queensland Premier this morning, David Crisafulli. Obviously his state's on high alert. We've pledged to make sure that cooperation between the states takes place over the next 48 hours. We wish everyone in Queensland the best during a difficult period, and he's obviously said any resources that are available for New South Wales we can call on as well. And we need to bunker down over the next 48 hours and get through what may be a very difficult time. I'm going to hand over to Jane.
Good morning, everyone. So I'll just give a very brief update on Tropical Cyclone Alfred and the impacts we're expecting that to bring to New South Wales. So earlier this morning, that system was located around about 430 kilometres east of the Gold Coast and rated as a Category 2 system. It is moving westward towards the southern Queensland coast and expected to make landfall early Friday morning as a Category 2 between the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. It's still quite early days, and that the tropical cyclone is being monitored, and warnings will be updated regularly over the coming days with more up-to-date information. What that means for New South Wales is a deteriorating weather situation over the next 2 to 3 days. Today we can expect the winds to increase along the northern rivers and the mid-north coast. We've already received reports of gale force winds along up at Byron Bay this morning, up at Cape Byron. So we're expecting winds to continue to increase over the next 3 days. We're also expecting the waves. There's some really large waves associated with this system, and they'll be coming into the New South Wales coast as well. Large and powerful waves, large enough to cause significant coastal erosion. Observations from the Coffs Harbour buoy this morning had waves around about 10 metres in the offshore waters, not inshore, but certainly signature that there's very large waves with this system with the potential to cause damage. The other feature of note with this system and all tropical systems is they bring very heavy rainfall over extensive areas with the potential to cause extensive flooding. We do have a flood watch out for this related to this system, and we're expecting it to bring moderate to major flooding from the Queensland border down to the Manning River, not including the Manning a little bit less. But the key message is we can expect from this system, along with destructive winds, extensive flooding, most likely major flooding, as well as the real potential for some very dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding. So the rainfall is expected to start to increase today, further in tomorrow, but really peak along with the winds on Thursday night, Friday morning, as this system approaches the coast. The warnings and the forecasts will be updated over coming days as this system moves closer. We monitor its track and we monitor the observations. We're urging the community to please keep up to date with the warnings. You can access them through the Bureau's app, the Bureau's webpage. You can set up push notifications, so for your area, the most current warning will come up on your phone. This is a very dangerous weather situation, and we're just urging everyone to please keep up to date and heed the advice of emergency services. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jane. Good morning, everybody. And I just want to pick up on that last point, which is the fact that this is a very serious weather situation. There is danger involved in it. We're taking it seriously, and we ask everybody to take it seriously as well. As a government, we're doing as much in terms of preparation as we possibly can. This is the moment before the storm, and we are certainly not trying to create a sense of panic. Rather, what we want to do is make sure that we cover all of the bases as much as we possibly can. And what that means is a pre-deployment of our emergency services. The SES are there, but they're working with all of our agencies. And I'm really pleased to see that incredible interoperability between the State Emergency Service as the lead agency, working with the RFS, working with Fire and Rescue, Marine Rescue are there, Surf Life Saving are there. What we're seeing is the very best of our community come together at a time when we need them the most. And that's the spirit of New South Wales. That's the people that we are, and that's exactly what's required now. And the Premier touched on it, and it's a really important point, and I'll just accentuate it again. Please, if you don't have it, download the Hazards Near Me app. This is a one-stop shop of information for you that you can set up for your local zone. We also will make sure that we send messages out through the entire media landscape that we possibly can. There's also been discussion about relocation into whether it's an evacuation centre or whether you've got family and friends. Again, can we urge you to make sure that you start with that planning and to move beforehand. We've just heard about the weather circumstance that's coming, as we know there's going to be very strong winds. We know there's going to be really heavy, widespread rain, which will result in parts of the roads that will be cut off, will potentially result in trees being down. If you need to move, we'd prefer that you'd move earlier, especially if you live in low-lying grounds. We would be saying that that would be something that you could get onto as soon as possible. Also, as you've heard, what to do is assure the people of New South Wales, particularly people in the Northern Rivers who we know are still suffering the trauma of their major incident from 3 years ago, that we are doing everything as possible, that we're doing everything we possibly can as a government, across all of our government agencies, across our non-government partners, and across every possible area that we can, to try and make sure that we are as best prepared as possible to be able to deal with this. We hope for the best, but we do plan for the worst. The Premier has said that we're expecting the next 48 hours to 72 hours to be quite bumpy. We're asking you to please make sure that you put your own personal safety there. We need you to follow all of the instructions, make sure that you're safe. We will get through this. We have done that before, and we'll see the very best of our people, make sure that we do. I'm just going to hand over to Commissioner Watson from the SES.
Thank you, Minister. We are dealing with 3 natural disaster events in one. We've not seen this situation since 1990, where we had the effects of a tropical cyclone Nancy. We're dealing with a significant coastal surge impact, waves up to 10 metres. If you're living directly on the coast and you know where your high tide is, you will see water potentially a half a metre above that high tide mark. In addition to that, you will potentially and very likely have winds impacting your location in excess of 100 kilometres per hour. If you do not feel safe in that location, now is the time to relocate. Contact your family and friends and relocate now, or as you've heard, we'll have multiple evacuation centres open for people to also relocate to. Subsequent to that coastal surge, we'll feel the more significant effects of the winds. Winds again in excess of 100 kilometres and gusts far in excess of that, well inland. Again, that will likely bring down power lines, trees, damage, and restricting a lot of access. As we've heard, we're already starting to feel that early impacts of those winds, but the worst case scenario, we'll start to really feel that in terms of Thursday afternoon and into Thursday evening as the tropical cyclone crosses in Queensland. What again that means is if people feel like they are in unsafe locations, now is the time to relocate. Associated with that crossing, and then very much after that wind, it will start to abate on the Friday, but that's when we'll start seeing the significant rainfall. It's very difficult to predict the rainfall, but we are planning for significant rainfall that will see significant inundation, isolation, and potential need for evacuation. I want people to act now, relocate now before those circumstances are occurring. This is not just a rain event, this is a wind event, multiple wind events, and then a potential flash flood and flooding event. So now is the time to act. By Thursday afternoon and into Thursday evening, it is too late. By that stage, we need people to bunker down and ride out the significant winds as the cyclone crosses in Queensland, and then we'll be able to deal with what comes on Friday. From an SES perspective, we have a range of hundreds of resources, hundreds of personnel from the State Emergency Service, hundreds of personnel from multiple emergency services, as we've heard from police, ambulance, right through to fire services. We've been out door knocking with the local community, making sure that those that are in the most vulnerable areas and the high risk locations are aware of the risk, and having these sorts of detailed conversations with them as we speak. But the key message is that now is the time to take action. There are 7 evacuation centres if you don't have a lot place to go, but we would encourage you to contact family and friends and work closely with them in terms of that relocation. We do not want to be having to evacuate people that are at high risk and then at the last moment where we'll likely have difficulty in terms of access, and for those people also to have difficulty egressing from their location once the storm has actually passed through. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Premier. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Reconstruction Authority has been working very closely with people of the Northern Rivers region to recover and rebuild from the tragic floods of 2022. Our thoughts today are very much with the people of the Northern Rivers. We will stand alongside you. We understand the trauma of that previous event. I want to make it very clear that we have listened to the messages and we have learnt from 2022, and we understand that speed to recovery is essential for the community. To that end, we are pre-planning for recovery even before we go into a response phase. We have pre-positioned staff from the Reconstruction Authority to the Northern Rivers to be ready. We are working very closely with councils to ensure that where essential public assets such as roads need to be fixed quickly, we'll work with them to get that done. We'll also work with councils to make sure that clean-up progresses very quickly again to give confidence that we are recovering quickly. We're already planning for recovery centres and recovery assistance points, and we've reached out to our partner agencies. Recovery centres will provide a range of services for the community to assist them to recover. We will provide further information about the details and locations of those centres as required. Can I just reiterate at this time but the message? Please download the Hazards Near Me app. Please listen to best advice. We will continue to communicate right through the response phase and certainly communicate what is available, what assistance and what we're going to do to quickly rebuild and recover the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mal, and we're all happy to take questions. Go for it.
Multiple Woolworths have run out of stock. Will you be stepping in and there's more in Ballina to help out with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at that very closely. One of the key messages we want to get out to the community is to not panic buy. We've got good logistical lines with major supermarkets into most of those centres, and there are contingency plans in place in the event of communities being shut off. And if we do have panic buying across supermarkets in the Northern Rivers, what ends up happening is you're taking away a food source for a neighbour, a family member, someone else in the community. So I want to assure the community that we've got good contingency plans in place. Regrettably, this is not the first natural disaster event that the Northern Rivers have had, and as a result both the supermarket chains, the retailers and the New South Wales Government have got good logistical lines into those communities. So I'm hoping people show some common sense, particularly for things that everybody needs. And just remember, if you take more than you need in the next few days, it may be the case that you're taking it from a neighbour or someone else on the street.
Based on existing flood mapping, how many homes can we expect to be affected in northern New South Wales?
Yeah, look, it fluctuates a bit. The SES and the BOM work on percentages, and we plan for the worst. So the pre-positioning of SES resources and Fire and Rescue New South Wales and the RFS and New South Wales Police are based on a worst case scenario. As far as the actual number of houses, well, more, a lot more than we would hope to see, obviously. Our planning is for something akin to the 2022 natural disaster in Lismore, but I hope it's less than that. But as I've said, right through the entire operation, since Alfred emerged in the Coral Sea, we've been planning for the worst and hoping for the best.
Are there any sandbag shortages as we've seen in Queensland?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Premier. No, there are plenty of sandbags. Community's been very responsive in terms of our community messaging. We've had thousands of calls in the last 48 hours. Most of those calls for assistance has been regarding supporting the local community in terms of sandbagging. We've got literally 100,000 sandbags available. We've continued to be providing sandbags to locations, so there's no issues with sandbags.
Are there any particular towns where you're completely worried that preparations may be falling behind?
There's no specific areas that I'm concerned about in terms of our preparedness. We've seen really good responsiveness from the local community in terms of their preparedness. As we know, they're very well prepared and experienced, unfortunately, in the context of floods. We've sent in hundreds of resources from flood rescue technicians, in-water, on-water rescue technicians, significant equipment, high clearance vehicles, all of the assets that we need, and a lot of that, we've got a second wave, if you will, that includes aircraft that sits outside the high wind locations. So we're ready from a resourcing perspective. The key message though for me is that for the community to understand that this is a wind event before the rain event, and that is not something our communities would normally have experienced, certainly not to this level, and that's why I want people to act now and not deliver to the last moment, because that that evacuation, once the rain is occurring and we're starting to see the flooding, that is going to be extraordinarily difficult for people to get out, or for our people to get in some cases. We will get there where we need to, but that's the key message that I want people to focus on, is this is a wind event before a rain event.
This question might be best for Jane. What can the areas of Coffs Harbour and Dorrigo expect in the coming days as a result of this situation?
So from tomorrow in particular, the rainfall in that area starts to increase, and the entire that whole stretch of the coast from the Queensland border down to the bottom of the mid-north coast, so south of Coffs Harbour, a few days of rain. So increasing tomorrow, continuing through Friday, not really easing too much before Sunday. Wind as well increasing, and the waves increasing. There are some hills to the back of Coffs Harbour that we know are a bit of a hot spot for some really heavy rainfall, so that's something that we're watching for as well, that local area.
I might just read out some of these evacuation centres. So these are open as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. Tyalgum Hall, Terranora Public School, Mullumbimby RSL, Kingscliff TAFE, Mawillumbah TAFE, Ocean Shores Country Club, Korakai Public School, Kyogle Memorial Hall, Southern Cross University, Evans Head RSL, Burringar Sports Club and Yuki Hall. And obviously we'll open more areas if needs be, but I hope people are taking the advice of the SES Commissioner. And if you're in a vulnerable situation, if you believe you're unsafe, and many people in the Northern Rivers unfortunately have gone through much of this before, then Thursday's the day to act, because Thursday evening and Friday morning we're expecting the storm to approach and cross into New South Wales.
Premier, if I could just ask you briefly about the mosque threat yesterday.
Sure.
Should the hate speech laws that were passed through Parliament last month, should they have been extended beyond race to include religion?
Well, I just want to make it clear that an individual's been arrested under existing laws, and it's never been okay under any law, any provision, to make that kind of threat. It's a serious matter. It's before the courts. I think New South Wales Police showed how seriously they take these particular threats by taking such swift action. And I'm not going to comment about an active police investigation other than to say we won't tolerate it or stand for it. No matter where hate is directed to any member of our community, you've got a right to feel protected and safe in New South Wales.
So will the laws be extended to include religion as
Well,
well?
we've talked about this extensively. I mean, no state or territory has passed laws in relation to the 7 other categories of hate speech. The only provision that's in place anywhere in Australia is in Western Australia, and that's in relation to race. Now, we haven't ruled out potentially changing it, but we have to be cognizant of constitutional risks and what it means to speech in New South Wales. The point the government made in the last few weeks is that we didn't have a moment to act because we were seeing unprecedented levels of anti-Semitism in New South Wales that were completely intolerable.
Just on another topic, will all roads critical to Bradfield Airport be completed before opening day? If not, when will they be completed?
Yeah, look, the completion of those roads is happening at different rates and at different timetables. I'd love to do them all yesterday. I'd love to have them all completed in 12 months. Unfortunately, you're talking about billions of dollars worth of public infrastructure. Now, we have to both plan for it and make sure that we've got the financing to complete it. I don't do this too often, but the previous government, I think it's important in context to understand that the previous government hadn't planned for the road connections to the second airport. They had planned for the metro. I mean, I give them credit for that, but not the road connections. We've got to do both. We've got I think, a circumspect plan that can work hard in achieving that infrastructure that the second airport needs to survive. But I'm comfortable with the rollout in the next few years, but it just can't be done overnight.
Premier, police arrested a serial domestic violence offender after he cut off his ankle bracelet yesterday. You said the system isn't working. What will you do to change it and when?
Yeah, we're going to end the provision of private ankle monitoring in New South Wales. The verdict's in. It's not working. I think it's regrettable that it was introduced in any event. We've got a process to change whoever's currently being monitored by private outfits, by private electronic monitoring outfits. And that'll take place in the next few weeks. Unfortunately, it also requires legislative change. So at the moment, the Attorney General's drafting a bill. We'll introduce that to Parliament. We'll change the regime in New South Wales, but, fair cop, based on recent evidence, clearly private electronic monitoring of people who are charged with very serious offences is not working.
Just back on the airport, there are suggestions 20 critical road upgrades are underfunded. Is this correct, and why haven't they been funded?
Well, I mean, if you look at the New South Wales Government's Capital Works program for Western Sydney, it's massive. You're talking about an enormous amount of money that's going into one of the fastest growing communities in the state. The challenge for the New South Wales Government is to prioritise what's next. Where does the funding go to both ease congestion for people who live there, as well as create economic growth and opportunity? The government in the last few weeks has announced, with the Commonwealth Government, hundreds of millions of dollars, I said thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars of brand new roads for critical Western Sydney intersections, the most prominent of which is 15th Avenue, which is a bloody goat track. I mean, one of the worst roads in New South Wales, and also one of the busiest. So we're going to roll these out bit by bit. We're not done yet. The key thing about today's announcement when it relates to Bradfield is we've got a plan. It gives business certainty. It means that we can plan for the future. And when houses go in and communities move in, our plan is to have the infrastructure up and running before that.
Will the road situation cause an issue for the airport once it's open and running?
Look, the airport's going to ramp up. It doesn't open at full capacity on day one, and its plan, because I've met with the operators of the airport, the builders of the airport, and their plan is to see progressive increase in air patronage, commercial services, as well as industry over the next few years. Well, I guess that's a long way of saying they're not going to be at full capacity on day one. We believe we've got enough time to get the infrastructure in, and we're determined to do it.
Just back to the ankle bracelets. Yesterday your government indicated there were two legislation options on the table, one of them being immediate cessation of the system. What do you propose? You would have to go out and round up this group of offenders who are out on the streets. How do you propose?
Yeah, look, I'm not proposing that at the moment. I'm saying that we're going to end the practice of private electronic monitoring, but I'm admitting that it's going to take a bit of time to get that done. For two reasons. Firstly, there's people in the community that have got the monitoring today. Secondly, we need to move legislation to make it happen. But I'm clearly signalling the government's had enough of this regime and we need a change.